Hello and welcome back. Sorry, I was just fixing my camera there. I've got an awful glare that's coming in. You can see my face, you can't see my face. I'm so sorry about it. There's nothing I can do, but at least we have sun, so that's exciting. So I'm Nafisa Shafiq and I am hosting Kate Jones today. This is this morning session, and Kate will be talking to us about her career. So she's talking about all the jobs that she didn't get and how she handled the ones that she did. Sorry, getting a bit tongue-tied there. I think I'm fangirling as well, I have to be honest. I've got Kate in front of me. So can we all just show Kate some love? Kate's fending off the lurgy at the moment. So we're both coming in with a bit of a cold. So lots of heart emojis for her, lots of round of applause as she kicks off this session. And just some housekeeping then. You can click on the CC button that's over here just to turn on the captions. And on the right hand side, there is a Q&A tab that you can pop your questions in. So I am going to hand you over to Kate now.
Thanks very much, Nafisa. So forgive this, excuse me, I will mute myself regularly to sneeze or cough or generally do something other disgusting caused by the lurgy, but we'll get through it together. Nafisa and I are both under the weather, but we're going to get through it. So thanks for joining this session. As Nafisa says, I'm Kate and I head up communications and corporate affairs at Tarmac. My pronouns are she and her. And at work, what I also do is head up our newly formed menopause committee, something that's really close to my heart at the time of life that I am. And so I'm proud to be leading that conversation in the construction industry. So today I'm going to talk about my career, all the jobs I didn't get and how I managed the ones that I did. And the seed of this session was sown after I spoke at a conference in real life, if you remember those. And a lady came up to me afterwards and she said how much she admired where I'd taken my career. Which I thought was an interesting take and one that I'll come back to in a minute. But first of all, I'd just like to kick off with a poll, if I can, to understand among you guys what your approach to career development is. So 3 questions for you. Do you have a career plan? And is that a gut feel? Is it based on something formal? Or no, you don't have one at all? So take a second there to give me some feedback and tell me where you are in your career approach. Can we see some results on that, Lee? If you haven't voted yet, if you click on the poll tab and choose one of those options. Okay, right. So lots of people basing this on gut feel, if anything, but the majority of people, just about stabilizing around 50%, don't have that career plan at all. Okay. Hopefully we'll share some tips today, and maybe when we leave this session you'll have an idea for how to form something that's a little bit stronger than just a gut feel. Great. If I can have my slides back then, please, Lee. Thank you very much. So I come out of the stage, I come off the stage, I have this conversation with the lady who told me how much she'd admired my career, and I said something like, I've been lucky to be given so many fantastic opportunities. But what my face really did was that, because nothing is ever as it seems on LinkedIn. And whilst I say that I have been given many fantastic opportunities, there have also been as many pitfalls as there have been highs. And this session also reflects the many conversations that I have with comms folk up and down the country, either through mentoring, through the IOIC, which I do, or through conversations with colleagues like lovely Anik, who's hosting this week. And those conversations talk about how frustrating it is as a comms person when you see everybody on LinkedIn and on Twitter bringing their strategic A game, and you're still plugging away fighting tactical battles every day. Well, let me tell you, we all fight tactical battles every day. We just don't post about them on Twitter. So when Asif kindly invited me to talk at commsHERO this week, I knew this was the stuff that I wanted to talk about. I could have shared a case study, but a case study might not be relevant to your organisation. My business is not your business. My stakeholders are not your stakeholders. But my career could certainly run like yours does, with the same highs and lows, and indeed, let's be honest, the shark-infested waters that we all encounter every day. Because even if you have a plan, those 3% of you that said you have a career plan, it probably doesn't look like that top picture. It's much more likely to reflect the reality of the highs and lows and missteps along the way. So what I'm going to do today is talk to you a little bit about a couple of my own highs and lows, and then I'm going to share with you some of the tips that I still use every day to manage those conversations that we all have with our stakeholders and make sure that I'm delivering great value comms for my organisation. So I'm going to start, if this will click forward. Help me, Lee. I've lost my clicker. It won't move forward. There we go. I'm going to start back in 1996, which for those of you watching in black and white is very much the last century. And this is my starting point in communications. I saw an advert in the media pages of The Guardian on Monday, because that is where you went for comms jobs in 1996. And when I say I saw this advert, I really mean I saw an advert. Look, I've still got it. Here it is. And this is here on my shelves in the office to kind of remind me where I started and how far I've come. I started as an editorial assistant, but that was the first job that I nearly didn't get, because I saw the advert and I rang up for an application form, because again, 1996. And the lady who answered the phone said, "I've sent out 500 application forms, not sending any more." And I, straight out of university, found some resilience to say, well, I might be the best person for the job. Can I at least send my CV? And she said, if you must. So I sent my CV and I came for an interview, and obviously I got the job. And I got that job and I started that job on the 10th of June, 1996. And the 10th of June, 1996, if I could have my next slide, please, Lee, is a long time ago. That's how many minutes have passed between me starting that job as an editorial assistant for an employee engagement agency and giving this presentation today. That's a number that I'm not even going to try and read out, because I do words, not numbers. But what I do know is it's really important to me to enjoy as many of those minutes as I possibly can. But that hasn't always been the case. So Lee, if you would step me on, please. I'm going to talk about two jobs that I didn't get. Now, the first job that I didn't get, I call the stringing me along job. So I was approached for a new position as head of internal comms. I wasn't head of internal comms at the time. I was a senior comms manager. And I was approached to apply for a job in an organisation that was setting up the function for the first time. So I took myself down to London 3 times for interviews. I had some really, really enjoyable conversations, and I felt really productive conversations. And I had a call from the recruiter to sort of give me the verdict. I was on a train. And she said that I'd really blown them away and I'd really shown them what comms could be. And my approach was really exciting to them. And I've got to tell you, comms friends, I was sitting on that train feeling pretty good at this point, because I thought I knew what was coming next. But what came next was, so they're going to take all of your feedback and they're going to rewrite the job description and they're going to go back out to market. And I was a little taken aback. And I thought, well, I came for 3 job interviews. I didn't give you 6 hours of free consultancy as to what your head of comms should be doing. And I was invited to apply for that job when it was re-advertised. And that's an invitation that I did not take up. And I did not apply for their job when it was next advertised. So that was the first pitfall. It took me a while to get over that one. Very disappointed. The second pitfall, if you could move me on, thank you. This is my safety net pitfall. And safety net here means 2 things. So it's about the perils of being seen as a safe pair of hands, and it's about the perils of doing it without a safety net. So I was involved in a restructure. It was one of many restructures in the organisation that I was in at the time. And we'd done this restructure to ourselves as the comms leadership team, because we could see that the business was changing and we needed to change with it and change before somebody else came and changed us. So we spent a long time as the leadership team defining what the roles in the new comms team should look like. And I was instrumental in defining a role that focused purely on measurement and employee insight, because that was something that I was doing as part of my role and was really important to me. So we went through the aspirational counselling, which if you've ever been involved in that, it's the least aspirational thing you'll ever do. It's basically list out 3 jobs in a new organisation that you could bear to do, and you will either get your first, second, or third choice. So I watched all my comms colleagues go into a room with the head of and be told which of the jobs they were going to be asked to do, and I was left until last. And I was taken in, and the opening gambit was, "Well, Kate, I don't think you're going to like what I'm going to tell you." And she was quite right. I didn't. They'd asked me to do a job that wasn't my first, second, or third choice. It was a role which was nothing I'd ever done previously, certainly not in line with my career plan at the time, but basically would have seen me looking after something like 12,000 employees based in both the UK and overseas, and with one communications exec to support me. And I felt that that was just not doable, and I said as much. And I was told, "You're right, Kate, it's not doable, but if anybody could stand a chance at doing it, it'll be you." So that's the perils of being seen as a safe pair of hands. You know, sometimes you get put in a particular place and you aren't able to move on or do what you really want to do. I'd stay in that role for about 9 months, but I think it was the sign that told me that it was time to move on. So let's talk a bit now then about move on from Kate's therapy session, and let's talk about some of the tips that I have taken with me throughout my career to help elevate both the profession and also serve me as I've wanted to progress. And the first thing I would say is that channels are your great glass elevator. I don't like it when comms people complain about being seen as the postbox. I think being seen as the postbox is a great privilege, because you are in control of the stories that your organisation is telling, both internally and externally. So I agree that it is limiting if you are seen as the postbox, but I also believe that you can bring some brilliant strategic thinking, and you can really bring your profession and advice and guidance to that channels role. Just think about the impact that you have as a channels manager. You are showing what's important to the organisation. You are showing how the organisation is progressing against its strategic goals. And channels are the drumbeat of the communications activity within your organisation. I started in channels. I started as an editorial assistant and progressed to journalist. I moved in-house to become a channels manager, and my channels manager in my comms teams has always been a management role, because I recognise its importance. If you aren't involved in channels, I might say that COVID could have been your great glass elevator. That was a great opportunity to change the conversation around comms. And I would also say that hybrid working and the future of work now could be a similar catalyst for going and resetting the conversation around comms, if that's something that you want to do in your organisation to show the value that we can bring. The next tip that I would have for you would be to be more Celeste. So let me introduce you to this lady. This lady is Celeste Evans. She was a very famous magician. She lived from 1931 until 2017, and she became one of the most famous female magicians on the world stage. She did travel the world to do it. She even managed to sneak into the magic circle whilst dressed as a man and fool them all, which I think is possibly her greatest trick of all. But we're all asked, aren't we, to work our magic? To which I say, we are magicians. And that again is an opportunity to bring your creativity, bring your strategic context to what you're being asked to do. So I would say, yes, I am a magician, and my Patronus is Hermione Granger, because I am proud of being a magician and I am proud of working my magic, because we are unique in the organisation that we bring those creative skills to very complex and often very dry subjects. Similarly, you may be asked, if you're asked to work your magic, you may be asked to just pretty it up. That's a commsHERO t-shirt, commsHERO tenet. And there is a trap in that request, but it's the word just. You have a choice. If you just pretty it up and then take to Twitter to complain that you've been asked to do a senior leader's slide deck, you haven't taken the opportunity. What's happened there, I believe, is a senior leader has come to you and asked for your help. And it takes a very brave senior leader to be vulnerable in that moment and say they've got a problem and they don't know how to solve it. But you can do what they've asked. You can pretty up their slides, but you can also add context. You can also add content that they hadn't thought about, but you know is important because you're in tune with your audience. So don't just pretty it up. By all means, pretty it up, but go further and bring some value there as well. And if you're lucky, this might happen, as happened to me. So I was supporting a new chief exec who did indeed come and ask me to wave my magic wand. So I waved my magic wand and I redid his presentation for the next day. And that led to a conversation. You would just move me on, Lee, please. The conversation that it led to was, by the way, the slides that we've just put together for the announcement tomorrow, you're coming to that announcement with me, aren't you? Well, I wasn't. So, but I said, yes, absolutely. Yes, I'll be there. And then he said, well, how are you getting there? And I said, well, I'm getting the train. He said, no, come in the car with me. So having prettied up his slides, I now find myself in a chauffeur-driven BMW for an hour and a half with the chief exec. Now, if you had an hour and a half with your chief exec, what wouldn't you talk to him about? So I had a great opportunity there to bring some stuff to his attention, to talk about what was on my agenda. And he couldn't go anywhere unless he was going to jump out of a moving vehicle on the M25. So I absolutely seized the moment there to bring some really good conversations to him for the first time, or to progress some that we were already having. The other time that's helped me, that's happened to me in my career, was when I first moved in-house and I went along to record what we called at the time Tarmac FM, which was an in-house radio station. We call it a podcast now because it's the 2000s, not the 1990s. But Tarmac FM was a recording of colleagues and leaders talking about what was happening in the organisation. And again, we had a new chief exec, different one, but a new one. And I sat down in front of him and his first question was, well, what do you think we should talk about? And the previous chief exec had never asked me that. So you better make sure that if your CEO asks you for your opinion, that you've got one. So how do you make sure that you have insight and you have value that you can bring, and don't, so that you can seize the moment? So if you move me on, please, Lee. So this is about proving your worth. You need to measure yourself. You need to benchmark in whatever way that means to you. Your organisation may or may not value external benchmarking, or they may bat it away with a "they're not like us" comment. But measurement and benchmarking is truly how you can prove your value. And 9 times out of 10, bring the chief exec something that he doesn't know. He's going to be surrounded by all sorts of information and all sorts of people. But I believe that we as comms people are uniquely positioned to bring employee voice into the boardroom. And probably we're one of the few departments in the organisation that can do that. So measurement and benchmarking truly are your superpowers. They truly are your shield. They will prove what you're doing before a restructure or those difficult times, and they will benchmark and prove what you're doing when times are better as well. Professionalised there refers to professionalising the function. Do you take advantage of events like today? Obviously you do, you're here. Are you accessing training? Are you networking and visiting other organisations to bring best practice back into your organisation? Not all of those things need to cost money. I have yet to drop a direct message or a tweet to a commsHERO and say, help me out on something, and they say no. commsHEROs like talking about themselves, so come and ask us anything. We've all got the same challenges and we've all got solutions to share. And if you would move me on then, please, Lee. So let's pretend that all of that's going really well and you're happy in your role, but there will come a time when your head gets turned and a shiny new job will come up on the horizon for you. So how do you know when it is time to move on? And I think there are a couple of things that would help guide that decision for you and where you go next. So the first one, if you would pop me on, please, Lee. The first one is to know where you are headed. So you've probably come across this quote from Alice in Wonderland. One day Alice came to a fork in the road and saw a Cheshire cat in the tree. Which road do I take? She asked. His response was a question. Where do you want to go? Don't know, Alice answered. In that case, said the cat, doesn't matter. Now, I have never had a 5-year comms plan. If we just go back to that poll, I am in that group of people who haven't had a formal 5-year comms plan. But I've always known what my next step was. And I've used a couple of things for that. I've used the IOIC profession map or early versions of it. I now use the IOIC hiring guide, which they've just released in conjunction with VMA. So if you're in a position as a hiring manager, or if you're looking to make your next move, those two tools are really good to help you look at what type of activities and skills are needed for the next level that you're aiming for, and what are hiring managers looking for from their candidates. So seize your destiny, know what your next step is. Whether, like me, starting out, my next step was to be a journalist and then to be an editor and then to be part of the business development team. My next step was then to move in-house and move up through the hierarchies that way. But I've never been able to see further than the next rung on the ladder. And quite frankly, who knows what curveballs life is going to throw at you? So know what your next step is would be my first tip. My second tip, if you could move me on, Lee. Thank you. My second tip would be know when to quit. If you were listening to Rachel Miller's session at the start of the week, this came up with her. And my know when to quit story is very personal, but I'm quite happy to share it with you today. The role that I talked about at the start of the session that I didn't want, the role that was the safety net, the role that was doing it without a safety net that was not deliverable. It really wasn't. And I found my limit during that role. To the extent that I drove to work one day and I bipped my pass on the passer to raise the barrier to drive into the car park, and I sat in my car and I said, no, literally out loud said, no, can't do this anymore. I'm burnt out. I'm completely knackered. I'm living in my car between all the different sites and the different stakeholders that I needed to see. And I was completely knackered. And I turned my car around and I drove straight to the doctor. And I said to the doctor, I've got no idea what's wrong with me, but I'm going mad. And she said, you're not going mad, you're just knackered. And she signed me off for a month. And that really opened my eyes to what had happened. And I hadn't seen it in the moment, but that had really, really opened my eyes to how burnt out I was. And it was also the start of me looking for another role. And I got another role quite quickly, and they replaced me with 3 people. So that absolutely validated everything that I was right to do. And I'm aware that I'm speaking now from a position of privilege, but I wasn't at the time. I had a mortgage to pay. I couldn't just walk away from the role, but what I could do was put steps in place to find something that suited me better. The next tip that I would share with you in knowing where to go next is to know your values. And I've done quite a lot of work on my values, not the corporate values that we all talk about every day, although it's helpful if it aligns, but your own personal values. These are mine. Affection is my first one. If I don't get a hug a day, it's a crap day, and everybody knows it's a crap day. I'm very much rooted in physical affection. But the ones that relate perhaps a little bit more to work than having a hug every day, I need to feel that I'm in control and I can initiate things. I want to be generous with my time and my resources and help people in the way that I hopefully do through these sessions. I need to feel aligned in terms of membership, and I need to feel that I have a vision and a cause that I'm supporting. And I've brought all of those values to my work life, and specifically when I'm looking for where I go next. As I've got older, it's become increasingly clear to me that I need to get some strong matches against those values and those behaviours that you see on that chart. And finally, the last tip that I would share here is find your happy. I lost my happy during that horrible time where I turned my car around because there was no time for happy. But there are a lot of minutes at work. There are a lot of minutes not at work. So find something that brings you balance outside of work, because you can't pour from an empty cup. So you have to invest in yourself as well. If you have the time, and if you are like me, allied to a cause and want to deliver something, my final tip in this session before I open it up for some questions would be to become an IC activist. So if you'll pop me onto my final slide, Lee, thank you. And here is the long promised first Hamilton reference, because I can't disappoint you, as if we have to have a Hamilton reference in any presentation that I give. So IC activism for me looks like getting involved. It looks like bringing professionalism by getting qualified. and it looks like giving back. And there are all sorts of ways that you can do that. You can step up to one of the professional bodies, CIPR, IOIC, always looking for volunteers to progress their portfolio of activity, always looking for experienced people to act as mentors. So do look around and see what you can do. I also volunteer in my village committee, and yes, I do the newsletter, and yes, I do the posters, but I enjoy it, and it's my skill, again, weaving my magic. So I see activism is something that will serve you really well, because it will stand you head and shoulders as a comms professional who is committed to your profession. So thank you very much for listening, bearing with me through the lurgy. Go get them. You have the skills, you have the knowledge, you have the support network. So go get them, and please feel free to follow me on Twitter and read my very occasional and sporadic blog. Hi, Nafisa.
Hello.
How are you feeling?
Wow. I'm going to give you a round of applause. Everybody show some love for Kate.
Thank you.
That was incredible. I've made so many notes, and I'm definitely listening back to this because there was so much to take away from that. So thank you for being honest. Thank you for being vulnerable. And thank you for sharing some of the things that we don't tend to see. So thank you for that. I've got some questions. So I'll kick off some questions, but if anybody else has any, please pop them into the tab. So the Q&A tab, which is on the right. You talked about that whole just pretty something up, and we all tend to hear that every now and again, or just send this out. When somebody asks you to just send something out, how do you stop that brigade? How do you put something in place that then lets you analyze what you're sending out and understanding if you should or shouldn't, and how do you push back?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing I would say is you probably can't challenge effectively in the nuclear reactor, which is a senior leader standing on your shoulder saying, just put it out, Kate, or just put it out, comms teams. You're not going to have a productive conversation in that moment, because their pressure is to get something out. So have I just sent stuff out? Yes, I have. But what you then do afterwards is go and pick up the conversation, because you can educate outside of that pressure. So ideally, you will have a channels framework which is well communicated, and your senior leaders will understand the governance around accessing those channels. You've hopefully had the advance notice, so you or one of your comms team knows that it's coming and it's planned in, and we all live in a perfect utopia except when we don't. So I have just sent stuff out, but I've then picked it up with the stakeholder to say, here's what we've noticed from doing that, so bring some measurement. Hopefully that will prove that not many people did open it, or certainly they didn't take the action that was required. So use your data to educate, to take a different approach next time. Probably in that moment, that's all you can do.
Yeah, I love the use of data there as well, and how to use that. Yeah, definitely.
You've got to. I think, there's a quote that I come back to time and again, allegedly from a CEO. I don't care if it was true. I like it so much. But the CEO says, if you come with data, we'll use it. But if you come with opinions, we'll use mine. And of course we will, because he's the hippo. He's the highest paid person in the room. So you're going to use his opinions, but data trumps opinions.
Yeah, I think it takes away the emotions as well. I always say.
Very true.
I always say that it just stops the ego-driven stakeholder sometimes that we all have to deal with. The other question then that I had was, you've talked a lot about different teams, and I presume at some point there were small teams and flat structures as well. How do you progress when you're in those? So I know you talked about one of the roles where you talked about like the other roles that can come out of it, or the role that you then quit when you felt like you were at the point of burnout, and then they replaced you with 3 people. How do you progress when you're in that type of structure?
Yeah. And I have been the only comms person in the organisation. I've been in teams. Well, I've led teams of 12, and I've been in teams of 20 odd internal comms people, part of a function which was 60 people of brand and marketing people. So I've seen both ends of the scale. I think if I was the lone comms person or in a small team, I'd probably do a couple of things. So for the next 6 months, I'd find some comms champions. I would train up my comms champions. I'd spend more time with the good ones, because there will be some, and I would give them admin rights to the intranet, because suddenly, bang, you're not a comms team of one. You've got a comms network. and you've got some user-generated content going on your intranet, so everybody wins. Now, using comms champions in that way, yes, it will give you feedback, and yes, it will give you data, but it'll also give you an army of people who can help you get your message out. And as I say, if you use them in the right way, take over some of those clockwork channels tasks that we all have, and that we're all judged by: volume, publishing the right amount of stories through our channels, but maybe they can help with that. And maybe then you've got some free time because you've got your comms champions helping you deliver that resource hungry stuff that goes across channels. So in my next 6 months, I would use my profession map to see where I wanted to go next. And I would have some conversations around the organisation about perhaps side projects that I could pick up, or a job swap that might be possible to do within another department. But look around you to see, is there time that can be freed up, and then you can use that time to progress and grow, even if you are the only person, through side projects and those sorts of things. There's be a couple of ideas that
that's really interesting. The job swap is always interesting, I find, because you get to know so much about what else is happening. I've got a few questions coming in, so I'm just going to go through them. So Emma Wanacott from North Devon Homes asks, is there any advice if you want to move into internal comms specifically, but currently do a bit of everything within marketing, comms and digital?
Well, I think that's a great grounding, isn't it? You know, you've got the creativity and the measurement from marketing. You've got the digital to kind of bring that angle to internal comms, because you know, that's where people are. Whether you can find the move in your current organisation, I don't know. It may be that you are a team of generalists, and I've been in those teams as well. So I would try and do some of the project piece that I've just talked about. So if comms is already being done by a different function, go and make friends and see if you can bring some support. I doubt that HR, if they look after internal comms, are going to turn down any of your offered support. But try and carve out that niche. Try and pick up the skills in your existing organisation. So what can you do to get involved in some side projects to start building the skills in that direction? But it may well be that if you want a dedicated internal comms role, that you need to move. The other thing that you could do is prove your intention by going out and finding training courses, taking qualifications in internal comms, so that when you do look to make that move, you've got a point of difference that shows your commitment to that direction.
That's amazing. And then another question. We've got loads of questions coming in now, Kate. So I'm just going to try to whiz through them before we run out of time. So Caroline from All Things IC asks, what are the most common career questions you're asked by the IC community and the people you mentor?
I think stepping up is one. You know, how do you become a trusted advisor? You know, Rachel was talking about it yesterday. And we've probably all seen the escalator of communications roles, where at the bottom or the entry level, you'll have crafting and drafting, or sending stuff out, moving through into consultant, moving through into partner, moving through into coach. Two things on that. In my experience, it's cumulative. You don't stop sending stuff out, and you don't stop writing stuff, even if you're a head of department as I am. I still send out tweets occasionally. I will still issue announcements 9 times out of 10 because there's nobody else to do it, and it's a rare thing. But I've not stopped writing anything. I've not stopped crafting and drafting. What I do has changed. So how to move up through those roles and gain influence is one. That's a common question. And tips for handling those emotional conversations as well. You know, it is a situation of conflict. If someone's asking you to do something, the easiest thing in the world is to say yes. Because to do any otherwise is to put yourself in a situation of conflict, and that's an uncomfortable place to be. So take the comms aspect out of it, and there will be hints and tips and training courses online or in real life that probably your organisation runs about handling conflict, about building influence. That's something that we all face, whatever our profession is, as we move around our organisations. So progressing and handling difficult conversations are probably the ones that come up most. And don't get me wrong, I've had difficult conversations and gone and sat in my car afterwards and cried for 10 minutes because I found them so hard. Not recently, I will hasten to add, but yeah, I have. And the memory of those still makes me, you know, I get the feelings back again, because they're difficult conversations.
And sometimes it's about channeling that energy as well, and remembering, like, if you're crying or if you're angry about something, it's because you actually care.
Absolutely, because you're passionate about it. It's because you care.
Yeah, so it is reminding yourself, and I think we often tend to forget that as well. So Rachel Miller, who needs no introduction at all, said that she loves your session, and she has asked, what's the biggest mistake you see comms pros making, and what's your advice for them?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I'd probably go back to the first thing I said, which is I kind of don't like it when we beat ourselves up. You know, I don't like it when we say comms is just the post box. No, we're not. That's an opportunity. So I think that whilst I'm all for being humble, I think the biggest mistake we make is not banging our drum, is not going around our organisations demonstrating what we do, is not taking every opportunity to do something different and then prove the worth. So I think hiding our light under a bushel, Rachel, I think is probably one of the biggest mistakes that I see people making. It's a brave thing to move away from that, but so much will flow from it if you are demonstrating what you do. In our team, one of the things that we do is we put together a monthly report that I send to XCOM that rounds up what we've done in community engagement, social media, PR, and internal comms. And I send that every month. I don't get comments back every month, but I know I send it, and I know they read it. And if they are interested, they do come and ask. So, you know, measure yourself before anybody else measures you, and show what you found out.
And that actually reminds me of working agency side. I remember compiling those monthly reports for like clients, and it helps demonstrate what you're doing. And I think sometimes you have to do that in-house because you don't have the time and the resource to do it, and it's so just coming at that time. But you just, I
mean, you talk about time and resource. Yes, time is an issue, but we put ours together in Canva. Now, last time I checked, Canva was like free or pence. So you know, we yes, it's resource, and yes, it's time, but it can be done. And we share it across the team. There's one colleague that leads it and is very active in banging the drum and making sure that we're all producing the data that she needs. And we all do it as a team.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like 20 slides. I think that's the other thing.
Oh no, ours is 4.
Yeah. And then I've got Danielle coming in, just because I know we're running out of time, who it's more of a well-being check here. She is asking, how are you now, and are you happy in your current role?
Yeah, very much. Thank you, Danielle. I am. I've had 3 jobs since the one that we do not talk about, and I've been here for 5 years. So yeah, very happy, and I'm happy because it's ticking all my values boxes. You know, I do feel that I'm making a difference. I do feel that I'm moving things on in the organisation, and I do feel that I'm listened to. If I or the team want to do something different, we get support. And I think, yeah, I'm certainly happy in my role. I have daily frustrations still. I'll probably be sending some out later that I don't think should go, but it's going. But choose your battles. Thank you, Danielle.
And then the last question then, and I think everybody will want to know this, what was the best advice you've ever been given, and did you actually take it?
I'm looking up at my wall here. I am a terrible procrastinator. Sorry, my phone's on Do Not Disturb, which means it's my boss.
I won't tell you.
Weird. I am an absolutely terrible procrastinator. So I've got 2 pieces of advice in posters on my wall here. One that says the most effective way to do it is to do it. Just get going. Just make a start. If it looks too big, just take a small step. And the other one says do what matters most. When you're faced with a massive to-do list that you absolutely can't deliver in the time that's available to you, do what matters most, and everything else can wait. And do I take it? Hell no. I try to. No matter how much it's written in a nice poster on my wall, not always. I'm still a terrible procrastinator.
Yeah, I think I'm one of those as well. So no comments on that one. I just want to say thank you. That was incredible. So everybody listening, please show some love for Kate. I think we could talk all day. If anybody wants to carry on the conversation, you can use the hashtag. So it's hashtag commsHERO. You can join Guild as well. I know lots of people are having the chats and continuing the conversations there. So get involved. Before we do finish then, I just want to remind you of the competition. So if you finish from this session and go into the networking area or onto one of the tables, don't forget to tweet or share a picture, I should say, because it's not all about Twitter. Share a picture with the hashtag. There are daily prizes to win. So we've got Sharpies. I'm keeping mine close by. We've got some daily dairy to give away, which I presume is chocolate. I've still not checked that, so I'm going to go back and check that. There are lots of commsHERO pets, so use the hashtag for a chance to win some pets at home vouchers or for some Amazon vouchers. And then just to thank the speakers and then the sponsors as well. So thank you to Kate in particular. I know you've had a rubbish week, you're feeling a bit unwell, so thank you so much for joining us. And to Red Kite Community Housing, Staff Base, Prezi, React and Share, and First Up for helping us bring this session up. Next, we have got another session that I'll be hosting. I'm really excited about this, actually. I've tweeted about this so many times, but it's about Pakistani PR and how that has progressed. I think it will be interesting because the Pakistani PR space is very different from what we experience in England. So if you are around, if you can stick about for that. And then later on, we've got a number of other sessions coming up. So join us whenever you can. We've got Asif coming up later today, and we've got Stephen Wood. So join us for those sessions. And in the meantime, go grab yourself a cup of tea or a drink of your choice. Thank you.